Oh well. But next thing we're gonna talk about is the NFL helmet contest. So you definitely know more about this than I do. You want to talk about it a little bit?
Yeah. So basically, what the NFL did was a couple of years ago, they came out with in their consistent fight with concussions, they came out and said, we're going to show that we're investing in this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do a research grant for any company out there that's creating new technologies that the NFL can potentially leverage for safety. So anyone out there, you can make whatever you want, and we're going to pick 3 winners, and each winner you're going to get X amount of dollars to do R&D based on the concept you send to us, and then you'll have access to NFL players and NFL studies and basically be a part of the future of the league by, making these helmets. So it's like an actual partnership that for companies that they are trusting to get deeper into it. So they basically have 3 winners. The reason I know about this recently is because it made the news, and I don't watch the news, but all the old people in my life watch the news, and anything football related that comes on the news, all the old people in my life text me to say, "Oh, there was a thing about football helmets on the news tonight," right? And so my dad sent me the name. I started researching. I was like, "Oh, okay, so this is one of the grant winners." So there's basically 3 different winners right now, and I'm not quite sure because the funding numbers, I don't know if they're not even, but I know the initial grant was, let's see, where is it here? So there was 3 winners. Let's see. The initial thing I think was they said they were going to give out 2.5 million, but here it says they gave out a total of 1.5. Let's see. In 2021, development deliberation, the $3 million competition that only gave out half of it. So yeah, they basically awarded 3 different companies to do more R&D for their helmets. And the 3 companies are I think the interesting thing is all 3 companies are at 3 completely different growth stages. So you basically have a company called Kollide, Impressio, and Xenith. And it's interesting because they're 3 completely different concepts, different styles of companies, different stages of growth and development. So that's where it's kind of interesting. So the first one was Kollide, and the reason they came up in my life was because they're Canadian. So they're based out of Montreal, which is kind of interesting because somehow Montreal's like this football Canada hub. Like Next Trend is technically Canadian. They're based out of Montreal. What was that glove company? Invictus is based out of Montreal. Collide's based out of Montreal. And so basically what it is, it looks like some kind of, they said, optimized structure that they're working on with a kind of a new padding on the inside. Now, the interesting thing about Kollide is they have this gladiator helmet. And we don't know a ton about it right now, but the interesting part is the partner. So they're actually partnered with Light Helmets. And basically Light Helmets is working with Kollide. And I don't really understand how it works, but they're basically coming out with what they call the Light Gladiator. And so it's like the same style of shell, but it's a different padding on the inside, which is kind of confusing for me on a couple fronts. So I'm going to go into them first. So I did it again. Okay, so I got a Light helmet here. So this is the Light helmet, and this is the part that everyone gives the Light helmet grief for, is the padding on the inside, because they say it looks like a bike helmet, right? And which makes sense. Like, it has these little pods and stuff, but they've defended it saying, oh, well, this is the same technology used in helmets for race car drivers. That's been like a big selling point of them, is like, trust it. It's using race car drivers. Just because it looks different than what you're used to doesn't mean it's not safe. But this is completely different on the inside. So they're basically abandoning that messaging, right? Because it looks like a 3D buckling structure. Like, everyone now has a 3D buckling structure. Riddell has the diamond. Vices has the reflex, which is not technically 3D printed, but it's a buckling structure that's made to absorb impact. And even obviously Shutt uses the same reflex system as well. So it's kind of interesting that they're abandoning that, but also, number one, they kind of said like the Gladiator is going to be like an NFL helmet, where I think they're still going to have the Light helmet, which is completely different. So that's kind of confusing. And then the most confusing part is they are calling this the lightest NFL preferred helmet, but it's not on their ranking system yet because it's not even in like R&D. But they like consistently, I'm looking at their messaging, and they consistently call it the lightest NFL preferred helmet, but it's not on any of the rankings that came out this year.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, Light Helmets has talked a lot of shit about the NFL and them not being a part of any of their stuff. So it's weird. Like, it's really weird from a messaging standpoint that, like, they're saying one of them is safe, but then the other one they're using one thing, and then they're kind of shit talking the NFL for not including them, but then they're partnering and saying they're the NFL's most lightest preferred on this other model. And, like, it doesn't make a lot of sense, and I don't know if they're running out of money or they're not making the progress they thought they'd make by 4, and they're trying to make some waves, and I just don't really know. It's a lot of stuff up in the air. So Light Helmets is definitely interesting. The second one was Impressio, and Impressio was kind of a different idea from the other two. So again, Light Helmets is kind of like they're making progress, but they're not a really well-known brand, and they're partnering and making changes. Impressio, on the other hand, it looks like they're not like a helmet manufacturer, but more their goal as a company is transforming the materials of it. So they're looking at like the inside. Same thing here. This is a 3D printed buckling structure that would go on the inside of the helmet that looks like this. That, again, like we said, looks really similar. Now we're done with them. Riddell Diamond padding. If you look up Riddell Diamond, it looks super similar. It's a 3D printed lattice liner buckling structure. I guess a lattice is a better term than buckling structure, but it's a 3D printed lattice that goes on the inside of a helmet. So I don't really know what this is that they're not already getting from Riddell. Maybe the shape and the structures are different of the lattice and whatever they're calling it. But it's interesting because in all of their testing here, you can see they show off a Shut F7. And then after that, and I can't tell if what model it is, but a Shut F7. And then there's some military helmets, which, like, everything R&D related starts in the military. But then in their graphics here, they're showing a Riddell Speedflex. And then down here, they then show it with a 3D model on a Riddell Speed. So it's more like it's the internal structure that they're looking at. So a completely different concept. They're not trying to, partner or be their own helmet company, but maybe they're trying to create a technology that these companies might license. One more. Run out of breath, but this is super cool to me. The final one is Xenith. And again, Xenith, completely different approach than the other two. And maybe this is part of the NFL's plan, is to kind of stagger these things. Xenith is already a reputable manufacturer of helmets that is a mass producer, that is into exporting goods nationwide, and has multiple different helmets. The only weird thing about Xenith is no one wears them in the NFL. Chosen Anderson wore one for a little bit. I don't think he's still in it. Nick Chubb was like the longest guy for the longest time, and he switched into a Shut F7 recently for this season. So kind of interesting how there's 3 completely different kind of companies that they're working with at like 3 different stages, 3 different objectives, each giving them $500,000, and seeing where they end up.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool to see, the NFL kind of trying to put some money down and work towards, safer equipment. Got to keep the players as safe as you can. And it is really cool to see how these companies are kind of, different in their own ways. One's making like the internal padding, then there's Xenith, who already makes helmets, and then, Kollide, who's working with somebody who's kind of trying to make helmets, but hasn't really broken through to the NFL level yet. So it's kind of cool to see, these 3 different companies kind of doing their own thing, trying to break into the NFL essentially. So yeah, that's all pretty cool. Can't wait to, see what kind of comes out of that. Could be cool.